Hey guys, I came across this very amusing video by Sam Griffin Guitar on why music theory sucks, and the guy makes a lot of interesting points that I kind of wanted to go over and address. So let's get to it.
What's up, bro? Today I'm going to tell you why music theory sucks. And is this a clickbait title? Do I actually think that music theory sucks? Yes, I do. Here's why. Now, I often tell people that I don't know a lot of theory, and that's kind of not true. I'm kind of lying. I went to music school for like 5 years, and there was tons and tons of theory. I took these 4 music theory classes called Music Theory 1, 2, 3, and 4. But what
Classic.
they should have been called is what Bach did 70% of the time. I don't use any theory for anything I do.
Okay, so I think he's just kind of being funny there, but it's a lot more than just what Bach did. That there's definitely like the voice leading and the chorale 4-part writing and stuff that you start off with is super Bach-y, but it very quickly gets into like what Tchaikovsky did and Mozart and how they kind of built on those sorts of things. But I think he's just being funny and cheeky anyway, so I won't dive into that too much.
Each individual chord. I'm focused on what is the bass note, I'm focused on what is the melody, and I'm focused on what are the notes that could potentially fit in between those two things. And that's why I really think ear training is quite possible.
Just going by what's in the bass and what's in the melody leaves a lot for you to have to fill in the middle, and it kind of leaves a lot of guesswork, which I think he's going to get into.
Because of that, I'm kind of free to hear exactly what's happening and then just like distill what are the important notes and then find out a place on the neck that works for that particular spot in that particular song. It's not an exact science. You're always going to come across new shapes for your hand.
I think that's all true. But he says distill the important notes, and then the question is, well, what are the important notes, and how do you know what the important notes are? So in jazz, typically the pianist or the guitarist, whoever's writing the chord stuff, they're typically leaving the root notes out of their voicings because the bass guitar is handling that stuff. So if you're playing a C major 7 in jazz, chances are the guitarist is just playing like E, G, B, or maybe even leaving the G out, and it's just E and B, and then maybe the guitarist is putting a D on top. So the guitarist decides what the important notes are kind of after the fact. But that's all music theory based stuff. If you're going into it and you don't have the knowledge of, hey, maybe I should leave the root notes out, then, which is music theory, then the people around you are going to be looking at you funny, and you also won't have those kind of open chords that you might have in jazz. And I'm sure there are lots of other contexts too, where you just don't need to play certain notes, like in more like a classical arranging context. A lot of times the third is only happening once. You're not doubling or tripling up the third. A lot of times it's just, roots and fifths and then one single third. So depending on what else is going on around you in the arrangement, you might not even need to play the third at all.
Now, you can come at it from a few different perspectives. One of them is like, okay, I can hear that the bass is an A. So I know this is one of my 5 A shapes.
No, see, that's where it pays to really learn theory. Let's finish this thought here.
Unfortunately, maybe that particular chord isn't from one of your 5 A shapes
Exactly.
that you've learned in your little jazz guitar book there. So instead of...
Yeah, so this is probably my biggest contention. Just because the note in the bass is an A doesn't mean the chord is an A. And maybe that's sort of what he's getting at here. But if we know the context of what's surrounding the chord, and we know that the key the song is in, and we know what the chord actually is, and we know how to construct the chord, then we can make informed judgments that maybe it's a D major chord with an A in the bass. Maybe it's an F sharp minor chord with an A in the bass. Maybe it's a G major chord with an A in the bass, It could be a lot of things. In regards to only knowing specific shapes, specific A shapes on the guitar, I'm going to go and grab my guitar and kind of show you what I mean. Wow, it's been so long. I've forgotten what my thought was. Let's say he said like five A shapes. Okay, so let's say this one. Your open A shape. That tuning's wrong. Whatever, we'll make it work. Then we know this one, this bar chord right here. Okay, and then maybe we know a couple 7 shapes of some sort. We know this one, A major 7, and we know this one. Let's see, he said 5. Then maybe we know this grab right here. Yeah, so let's say those are our 5 A major shapes. And that's all you know. And like he says, you're in a box. And he's right, you are in a box. Because you don't know theory, you just know shapes. You just know like a box, you know a few boxes. But if you know that A major is A, C sharp, E, and you know this lovely fingerboard on your guitar, then you can figure out how to construct an A chord however you want. So, like, I'll just make one up right now. So here's an A, and then I want a C sharp. So I'm gonna pick this C sharp up here. And then for an E, let's see. I think I'll do this E somewhere down here. There's an A major chord. That's kind of pretty. See, and I just randomly... I've never played that before, actually. This is the first time. Coming at you live here on video. The first time I've ever played an A major chord like this. And I'm sure actually the easier way would be like that. So that's, that's cool. You can do that. But then to his other point, if you have an A in the bass, you don't necessarily know it's an A major chord. So even if we have an A in the bass, and we have an F sharp in the melody, that could be a lot of things. And then he says he uses his ear to fill in the rest, and you can, and it's really important to have a good ear. But depending on what key we're in, and just if I can hear where the chord progression goes too, I can fill in the notes without doing any guesswork, because this could be like a D major chord over A. Or it could just be an A major 6 chord. And it could also be an F sharp minor over A. Let's see if I can make that off the cuff. Right? It could be a lot of things. Anyway.
So unless there's like a very specific inner voice that you're trying to accommodate within the chord shape you're working on, I'll just peck around and I'll go, okay,
right.
This note happens to kind of work. Oh, actually, I kind of like this note a little bit more. Or wait a second, I can play this open string and that's going to make it give like a more fleshed out feel or a bigger feel in this chord.
So one of the big advantages to theory, kind of like I just showed on the guitar, is that you don't need to peck around. And you might say, well, but then I'm stuck in a box and I'm just playing an A major chord. But the thing is, if I know, hey, here's my A major chord, and I can kind of play around with it. So maybe I'll add a B in here, or I'll add an F sharp in here, and kind of give it those other sorts of colors. Sam and I are arriving at the same point, just from different angles. So I'm trying to reconcile with this. I don't think his method is wrong, and I do ear training a lot too, but to me it's like I can hear it. So we might play an A major chord, and I can hear, oh, I want that F sharp in there somewhere, or I want to, do the dun 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 bum bum, kind of oscillating between the 5th and the 6th. And I can hear that, and I can also like conceptualize it. That's the only thing that I think is the big difference there. He's locking himself off from other methods of getting to the same point. It's good that we get to the same point, and he might even get there faster than I can. That's very possible. He seems like a very good musician. But I attack it from this angle, and I also attack it from this angle, which allows me to see things differently and see more patterns emerge that kind of helps me recognize more aspects of music. Okay, let's go.
It's really about finding the bass and the melody. Hey, Sam, I want to write my own music on guitar, but I gotta learn more theory first, dog. I'm just not ready for that. I need to get them theory knowledges up in my brain before I start writing my own music. You know what I said to that guy? You know what I said? I said, theory sucks, bro. You ain't gotta know theory to start writing your own guitar compositions. In fact, I think that at any level of your playing, you could be a straight beginner. It's the first time you've touched a guitar. There's no reason to not start writing your own stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. If people are saying, I don't know enough theory to write anything, they're kind of just making excuses for themselves. Just write. Punk music is good music. They didn't know any of that stuff. Yeah, just write and go for it. But if you find yourself writing and enjoying it, and if you want to develop your craft, it's very important to learn the tools of your craft. Music theory being one of them.
That's what you want to do, if that's something you're interested in. Because really, the thing that's going to get you more proficient at writing music is writing music.
Yep.
That's the main thing.
100%.
Of course, listening to different styles, learning new pieces of music, learning what you like, all that stuff is going to help you. But the main thing you got to do is write music. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you any of the chord names or any of the scales or the modal shifts or whatever the hell's going on in any of my compositions.
See, I think that's very unfortunate, and you're doing yourself a disservice. Because I think if you could say those things, if you could point to them, then you could also point to where they could be different. So, as an example, say you're writing a tune in Dorian, because he mentioned modal shifts, so I'll pick a mode. So you're writing a tune in Dorian, and you're doing that for a while, and maybe you don't know you're in Dorian, but you kind of like the way it sounds with a minor scale, but with a raised six. But then you don't know conceptually that it's possible to switch to Aeolian or Phrygian, for instance. You might peck around on the guitar and find maybe I can play these notes. But if you're taught that conceptually you can have a sort of modal interchange, as I call it, then you might start playing with that in your composition right from the get-go. So you might be playing in Dorian and then say, I like this melody in Dorian, but over here I'm going to have the melody in Phrygian. Or maybe over here I'll have it in Mixolydian. And because my goal for this composition is to inject different colors and modal changes into my composition. And I say this because I've actually done this in a couple compositions of mine where like the main melody was in Dorian, but then like the B melody I think I made in Phrygian or something. And I liked the contrast, and I went into that composition saying, hey, here's an idea I haven't tried before, I want to do this. But if I wasn't aware that those tools were available to me, then I wouldn't have been able to do that.
I know some guitarists who they're kind of set in certain shapes, in sort of guitar comfortable finger positions, and you can see that in their compositions, you can see that in their arrangements, and I can't help but feel like these guys and gals are kind of boxed in to the theoretical structures that they've learned.
So they are definitely boxed in, and I've felt that before as a guitarist, and my friend has felt that before. I remember back when I was first learning guitar, and my friend learned the minor pentatonic scale like we all do, and he said to me, he's like, I feel like I'm just in a box, and I can't get out, and I don't know what to do. But the answer to that is to learn music theory. I'm going to go back to the guitar here. So, I don't know how well you can see that, so I'm just going to assume that you can't see it well. So let's say we have a minor pentatonic scale. And maybe we got the blue note in there too. Okay, so then you might think, well, that's all I can do. I can do it here. Maybe I can do it somewhere else on the neck. It's like, well, that's it. That's all I know how to do. But if you learn, okay, now I'm just going to learn another scale. I'm going to use music theory. I'm going to learn Aeolian. Okay. Oh, well, there's that. Yeah, so maybe when I'm playing my pentatonic stuff, maybe I can throw in some Aeolian in there, and then you learn Dorian, and you say, oh, well, maybe I can, you can do that sort of thing. It breaks you out of those boxes to learn theory.
There's this one time I was kicking it with another guitar homie, and we decided, hey man, let's write a piece of music together. That'd be fun. And then the first thing he said was, okay, what key do you want this to be in? And I was like, what? What do you mean, what key do I want it to be? What did that's me? That means nothing to me at this point. That's a completely arbitrary thing to decide. Like, how about we think in our heads of a cool melody, or we start noodling around and find like a cool, chord structure or bass part or whatever.
The same key.
The point of it is, music is music, man. Music isn't music theory. I mean,
so by deciding what key you are to begin with, it gets rid of a lot of the guesswork. So yeah, you can both maybe Sam will noodle around in A major, and his cool guitar homie will noodle around in F major, and then eventually they'll be like, oh, this sounds really bad, or even if they aren't like explicitly saying this sounds really bad, they'll end up at the point where they're like, okay, now we're playing in the same key. Like, you're gonna get there at some point anyway, so it's just good to know what key you're in so you can at least start at the same place.
the key word there is
I don't
theory.
know.
It's a lattice, and you just want to make sure you're not bound by that lattice.
Definitely.
That lattice doesn't become the walls of your house.
So the thing there is, it is good to break out of music theory. Like they say, the rules are meant to be broken. One of the first things you learn in music theory is like no parallel fifths and no parallel octaves. And then the first thing the teacher always says is, oh, but go listen to Iron Man. Go listen to power chords. That's exactly what it is. It's just parallel fifths and octaves the whole time. So that's how I was always taught it. You learn it, and then you break it. It's much better to know what rules you're breaking instead of just not breaking them. Because the thing is, a lot of these people who claim to not know music theory, they just end up writing like really simple progressions, like let's say a 1-5-6-4 or something, and then they just do that for a while, and four chords, like 4-bar chord progressions. But if they knew music theory, they could kind of get out of that and say like, oh well, maybe like what if this chord was major and this one was minor, or what if I went here instead of there? And they would end up breaking out of those shapes and boxes. Sam seems to think that music theory puts you in a box, and that's sort of correct in that if you only know like one concept of music theory, you're in that box. But rather, if you know a lot of music theory, there are a lot of boxes you can jump in and out of freely. And you can borrow from one box and then bring it to another box, and then, build a brand new box with all those boxes. That's all music theory is doing. All right.
Those walls down, bro. Okay? It doesn't matter what chord you're playing.
Yes,
I don't care if it's a shape that you know or you don't know. Just slap a finger down, slap a finger down, and slap a finger down, okay? And feel and listen and decide if you like it or not. And then slap it into a new position and decide if you like that new position. So to sum it all up.
So that's all cool, but if you're playing with another musician, you shouldn't be doing that.
When you're in this key with this chord, you could go to a Neapolitan 6 chord and then, modulate from the pivot or whatever. It was none of that crap, man. Because again, I say crap.
But then you might not know that you can do that. And you might want to do that. That's the thing. Like, I guess you can use your ears and you can listen to what other composers are doing, and you can hear, oh, he did use the Neapolitan 6 chord as a pivot or whatever it is. But if you know going into your composition that you can do that and you want to experiment with it, then you have that option available to you.
I don't really mean crap. I just mean none of that stuff, right? Because that, again, they're all words that are trying to describe what music actually is, but they're not actually music.
Sam is clearly a very talented musician, and more power to him, but I think he's doing himself a disservice. What I don't get is in all of this music stuff, you see this in the communities a lot. It's just, people are almost proud of the knowledge they don't have, and I just don't get that. Like, I don't. What other field do people go into, and they're like, yeah, I don't know, like, I don't know, painting or something. I don't know anything about painting, but they go into it. I don't know anything about shadows. I just don't even. I don't bother with shadows. And it's like, well, maybe you should, because you're a painter, and it's good to learn things. Yeah, man, it's weird. And I get into these discussions with like synthesizer nerds, which synthesizers are not an easy thing to learn. You know, there's a lot of jargon and terminology and connecting things and oscillators into filters and LFOs affecting those things and modulation sources and destinations and CV input and blah, blah, blah. And like, there's not even really a textbook for it. You kind of just are plopped into this world, and maybe you're given a synthesizer and maybe some YouTube videos. But you know, it's kind of tricky stuff to learn. And then these same people will come out and say, "Hey, I don't know music theory. I don't care about music theory." And it's just like, why are you selling yourself short? Like, you're better than this. You've learned a fairly esoteric thing already. You might as well learn, especially if this is what you're doing as a craft, you might as well learn another thing that will help you understand this esoteric thing some more. But I digress. Anyway, I hope you like this video. Take it easy.